The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what most beings could comprehend. Crystalline walls rose like frozen waterfalls, their surfaces reflecting the soft blue glow of energy fields that kept the massive space habitable for dozens of different species. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections, each area specially designed for their unique biological needs. Ambassador Zephix of the Altarian Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes as he prepared to address the assembly. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked upon the gathered delegates. Today would mark a significant moment in galactic history, though not for the reasons most present believed. "Honored delegates," Zephix began, his voice amplified through translation matrices that converted his words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "We gather today to discuss the successful annexation of System Sol 3, previously inhabited by a primitive species calling themselves humans." A ripple of approval moved through the chamber. The conquest of primitive worlds was considered routine business for the Council, a necessary step in bringing order and civilization to the chaotic Outer Rim territories. The Altarian Empire had built its reputation on such efficient expansions. "The operation proceeded with minimal resistance," Zephix continued, accessing a holographic display that showed the blue-green world of Earth. "The inhabitants possessed only basic space travel capabilities and crude weapons. Our preliminary scans indicated a fractured political structure with numerous competing nations. We expected surrender within standard rotation cycles." Council leader Vorthak, an ancient being whose species had founded the original galactic government, nodded approvingly from his position at the chamber's center. His massive form, part flesh and part cybernetic enhancement, commanded respect from every being present. "Casualties?" Vorthak inquired, his deep voice causing minor vibrations in the chamber floor. "Minimal on our side," Zephix reported with obvious pride. 17,000 humans neutralized during initial contact. Their weapons proved ineffective against our shield technology. We established processing centers in their major population hubs and began standard integration protocols. The Keltorian delegate, a being resembling a large crystalline spider, clicked its approval. "Excellent efficiency, Ambassador. How many workers have been processed for the mining operations?" Zephix's expression darkened slightly. "This is where complications arose, honored delegate. The humans exhibited unexpected behavioral patterns. Instead of accepting their new role in galactic civilization, they demonstrated what can only be described as irrational resistance." Murmurs of confusion spread through the chamber. It was unprecedented for a primitive species to offer sustained resistance after the initial show of force. Most civilizations, upon witnessing superior technology and firepower, quickly adapted to their new circumstances. "Please elaborate," Vorthak commanded, his cybernetic eye focusing intently on the Altarian ambassador. "They refused to report to processing centers," Zephix explained, pulling up tactical displays showing guerrilla activity across Earth's surface. "Small groups began coordinated attacks against our occupation forces. They utilized primitive but effective tactics, targeting supply lines and communication networks. More puzzling, they seemed to prioritize rescue operations over tactical advantage." The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. Such behavior contradicted every psychological profile the Council maintained on primitive species. The natural response to overwhelming force was submission, not escalated resistance. "Perhaps their leadership structure is more complex than initially assessed," suggested the Vaxian representative, whose people specialized in psychological warfare. "We investigated this possibility," Zephix replied, manipulating the hologram to show capture records. "We detained their primary political leaders, military commanders, and scientific advisors. The resistance not only continued but intensified. New leaders emerged from their general population, seemingly at random. They demonstrated remarkable adaptability, learning to counter our tactics within days of each engagement. The Trilonic delegate, known for their expertise in xenobiology, leaned forward with interest. What of their physical capabilities? Perhaps we underestimated their combat potential? Zephix's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of agitation among his species. This is perhaps the most troubling aspect. Individually, humans are physically inferior to most galactic species. They lack natural armor, possess limited sensory capabilities, and have relatively short lifespans. However, they demonstrate extraordinary endurance and pain tolerance. Our combat specialists report that humans will continue fighting even when suffering injuries that would incapacitate most other species. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Species across the galaxy had been cataloged and studied for millennia. Such behavioral patterns should have been identified during the initial survey phase. Their planet was properly surveyed? Vorthak inquired, his tone carrying a subtle warning. Extensively, Zephix assured him, though sweat was beginning to form on his scaled forehead. Multiple observation periods over several of their years. We monitored their communications, studied their conflicts, assessed their technological development. Everything indicated a standard primitive civilization ready for integration. Yet they resist, Vorthak stated flatly. More than resist, Zephix admitted reluctantly. They've begun developing countermeasures to our technology. Their scientists, working in hidden facilities, have somehow managed to analyze our weapons systems and create increasingly effective defensive measures. Yesterday, they successfully brought down one of our cruiser-class vessels using modified versions of their own primitive missiles. The silence in the chamber became absolute. No primitive species had ever successfully engaged Council technology in direct combat. The very concept challenged fundamental assumptions about the galaxy's power structure. Recommend immediate escalation to Category 5 suppression protocols, suggested the Cathari delegate, representing one of the Council's most militant member species. Zephix's skin color shifted to a paler hue. We implemented Category 5 protocols 6 standard rotations ago. The humans adapted. They evacuated their population centers before our bombardments and somehow managed to maintain supply chains even while under constant surveillance. Their communication networks should have been completely disrupted, yet they continue to coordinate actions across their entire planet. The implications hung heavy in the chamber air. If a primitive species could resist Category 5 protocols, it called into question the Council's entire expansion methodology. Worse, it suggested that the galaxy's understanding of primitive species might be fundamentally flawed. What is your assessment of their ultimate capabilities? Vorthak asked, his mechanical components whirring as he processed the unprecedented situation. Unknown, Zephix replied, the admission clearly painful for him to make. Their potential appears to be evolving. Each day they demonstrate new capabilities, new strategies, new technologies. It's as though conflict itself accelerates their development in ways our models cannot predict. The Galactic Council chamber, normally filled with the confident discourse of supreme beings ruling the galaxy, fell into an uncomfortable silence. For the first time in millennia, they faced something they didn't understand, something that didn't fit their careful calculations and proven methods. What none of them knew was that at that very moment, a small human vessel was approaching their space station. Having somehow evaded every detection system the galaxy's most advanced civilization could deploy. Aboard that vessel, a single human carried a message that would shatter every assumption the Galactic Council held about Earth, humanity, and the true nature of the conflict they had unknowingly started. The great game was about to change, and for the first time in their history, the Galactic Council was about to learn what it meant to be afraid. The security breach alarm that suddenly pierced the Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything the delegates had heard in over 3 centuries. The crystal walls flickered as emergency protocols activated, sealing all exits and raising defensive barriers around the assembly area. Yet somehow, impossibly, a figure materialized in the center of the chamber. The human stood barely 2 meters tall, dwarfed by most of the alien delegates surrounding him. His clothing was strange, not the primitive furs or metals the Council's databases had documented, but some kind of advanced material that seemed to shimmer and shift as he moved. Most unsettling were his eyes. They held an intelligence and determination that made several delegates unconsciously step backward. "How did you breach our security?" Vorthak demanded, his massive form rising from his throne-like seat. The mechanical components in his body hummed with charging weapon systems, yet something made him hesitate to fire. The human looked around the chamber slowly, taking in each species with careful observation. When he spoke, his voice was transmitted clearly through the translation matrices. But there was something in his tone that the technology struggled to convey, an emotion that had no equivalent in most galactic languages. "My name is Marcus Chen," the human said quietly. "I represent the people of Earth, the world you call Sol 3. I've come here to deliver a message." Ambassador Zephix sputtered in rage. "Impossible! Our blockade around your system is absolute. No primitive vessel could possibly travel this distance, let alone penetrate our most secure facility." Marcus turned to face the Altarian ambassador, and Zephix actually took a step backward. There was something in the human's gaze that spoke of experiences beyond what any primitive being should possess. "You call us primitive," Marcus said, his voice still calm but carrying undertones that made the translation systems crackle. "You invaded our world thinking we were just another species to be conquered and enslaved, but you made a critical mistake in your assessment." "What mistake?" Vorthak asked, though his tone suggested he was beginning to suspect the answer wouldn't be comfortable. Marcus gestured to the holographic displays still showing Earth's surface. "You studied us during peacetime. You watched us during our normal daily activities, our routine conflicts, our standard technological development. But you never saw us when we were truly threatened." The Keltorian delegate clicked nervously. "Explain this distinction." "Humans have a saying," Marcus continued, beginning to pace slowly around the chamber's center. "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." We have another. "Desperate times call for desperate measures." But perhaps most relevant is one you've never heard. "Never corner a wounded animal." The assembled delegates exchanged confused glances. The human's words were being translated accurately, but the concept seemed foreign to most galactic species. "You see," Marcus explained, his voice growing stronger, "what you observed was humanity at peace. What you're facing now is humanity at war, and there's a difference you couldn't possibly understand." He stopped pacing and faced Vorthak directly. "When humans are comfortable, we create art, literature, music. We explore philosophy, develop slow and steady technology, engage in commerce. We're individuals pursuing personal goals within peaceful societies. But when we're threatened, truly threatened, something else awakens." The chamber's defensive systems suddenly detected multiple energy signatures approaching the station. Impossible readings showed dozens of vessels emerging from what appeared to be empty space, their technology unlike anything in Council databases. "When you invaded our world," Marcus continued as if the approaching fleet was merely a minor detail, "you didn't conquer a peaceful civilization. You awakened something that has slept in the human spirit for generations. Every human alive today carries within them the genetic memory of survivors, beings who fought through ice ages, plagues, wars, and catastrophes that would have destroyed most species." The security chief, a massive Gorlak warrior, activated his communication system. "Council leader, we have multiple unknown vessels surrounding the station. Our weapon systems cannot achieve target lock." Marcus smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. "You want to know how I got here? How we penetrated your security? How we're resisting your superior technology?" The answer is simple. You're not fighting the humans you studied. You're fighting the humans we become when everything we love is threatened. He activated a small device on his wrist, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic images from Earth. But these weren't the scenes of destruction the Council expected. Instead, they showed massive underground facilities, impossible technological developments, and human faces filled with a determination that seemed almost alien in its intensity. "In the 6 months since your invasion began, we've advanced our technology by centuries," Marcus explained, as the images cycled through scenes of human ingenuity that defied all Council understanding. Every human on Earth became a researcher, an engineer, a warrior. Mothers abandoned their children to grandparents so they could work 18-hour days developing new weapons. Children as young as 10 were calculating ballistic trajectories. Our elderly shared knowledge and insights with urgency born of desperation. The Vaxian delegates' psychological sensors were detecting emotional patterns unlike anything in their extensive databases. "This is impossible. No species can maintain such psychological intensity without breakdown." "That's because you've never encountered a species that evolved on a death world," Marcus replied. "Earth has tried to kill us since the day we first walked upright. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes. Our planet has been attempting genocide for millions of years. And we not only survived, we thrived." The approaching human fleet had now completely surrounded the station. Council sensors couldn't understand the technology being displayed, but the readings suggested weapons capabilities that exceeded anything in their arsenal. "Every human alive is descended from survivors," Marcus continued, his voice now carrying the weight of authority that made even Vorthak listen intently. "We're the genetic inheritors of beings who fought off ice ages with stone tools, who rebuilt civilizations from ashes, who looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway." Ambassador Zephyx was frantically consulting his tactical displays. "The resistance should have collapsed by now. Our psychological warfare specialists assured us that no primitive species could maintain morale under constant pressure." Marcus laughed, and the sound sent chills through several delegates. "Constant pressure? You've been providing us with motivation. Every human who dies makes the rest of us more determined. Every city you destroy becomes a rallying cry. You're not breaking our spirit, you're forging it into something stronger." The station's AI system suddenly reported a complete failure of their defensive networks. The human fleet had somehow taken control of Council technology using methods that shouldn't exist. "How?" Vorthok demanded, his cybernetic components sparking as stress overloaded his systems. "When you threaten a human's family, their home, their species," Marcus explained, "you discover what we're truly capable of. We're not just fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for survival, and humans fighting for survival becomes something beyond your understanding." He gestured to the tactical displays now showing Earth's surface. Where once there had been separate nations with competing interests, the screen showed a unified global effort of staggering scope and coordination. "You wanted to know about our political structure?" Marcus asked. "We abandoned it the day you arrived. Every human government dissolved itself and reformed into a single entity with one purpose: winning this war. Every human scientist shared their research freely. Every human engineer collaborated on projects they'd never seen before. Every human soldier learned tactics from traditions across our entire planet." The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of overloaded systems trying to process information that violated every model the Council possessed. "We're not the same species you surveyed," Marcus concluded, his voice now carrying an edge of steel. "We're what humans become when you threaten our home. And now, honored delegates of the Galactic Council, you're going to learn what that means." The massive view screen activated, showing the approaching human fleet in detail. Ships that seemed to bend space around them, weapons that appeared to manipulate matter at the molecular level, and worst of all, thousands of human faces visible through transparent sections of their vessels. Each face carried the same expression Marcus wore, the calm certainty of beings who had already decided they would win, regardless of the cost. The Galactic Council, masters of 1,000 worlds, found themselves staring into the faces of their own nightmare. Humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Every delegate stared at the human fleet surrounding their most secure station, their minds struggling to process what they were witnessing. These weren't the primitive vessels their surveys had documented. These were ships that seemed to defy the laws of physics as the Council understood them. Marcus Chen stood in the center of the chamber, his presence somehow commanding attention despite being surrounded by beings that could have crushed him physically. His calm demeanor was more unsettling than any threat or weapon could have been. "You still don't understand, do you?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying a note of something between pity and contempt. "You're still thinking like conquerors, like masters of the galaxy who've encountered a minor inconvenience." Council leader Vorthak's mechanical components whirred as his analysis systems struggled to find a solution. "State your terms, human. What do you want?" Marcus laughed again, and this time the sound carried no humor at all. "Terms? You invaded our home. You murdered our children. You enslaved our people. And now you ask what we want?" The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as Marcus's expression shifted. For the first time, the assembled delegates saw something in his eyes that made their most primitive survival instincts scream warnings. "What we want," Marcus said slowly, his words carefully measured, "is for you to understand exactly what you've done. You didn't invade just another primitive world. You invaded the home of apex predators who had temporarily chosen to live in peace." He activated his device again, and new images flooded the chamber. These showed human civilians, children, elderly families, who had been killed in the initial invasion. But more importantly, they showed the faces of the survivors watching those scenes. Every human who died had family, had friends, had people who loved them, and every one of those people made a choice that day. They chose to stop being the peaceful species you had observed and to become something you've never encountered before. The Trilonic delegate, his expertise in biology making him more aware than others of what they were witnessing, spoke up nervously. "The genetic markers we're detecting, they suggest massive physiological changes. How is this possible?" "Humans have a biological response to extreme stress that most species lack," Marcus explained. "When faced with existential threats, our bodies and minds adapt rapidly. Adrenaline, endorphins, neuroplasticity, our entire physiology shifts into what we call survival mode. But it's more than that." The holographic displays shifted to show brain scans of humans during combat. The patterns were unlike anything in Council medical databases. When humans fight for survival, our cognitive capabilities increase dramatically. Pattern recognition accelerates. Creative problem-solving expands. We begin making connections and innovations that are impossible under normal circumstances. You didn't just attack our cities. You activated the latent potential in 7 billion human minds simultaneously. Ambassador Zephix was consulting his tactical reports with increasing desperation. "The technological advancement rate is impossible. Species don't evolve this rapidly." "We're not evolving," Marcus corrected. "We're remembering. Every human carries genetic memory from ancestors who survived impossible odds. Every human has within them the potential that allowed cave dwellers to eventually walk among the stars. Your attack didn't create new capabilities. It awakened ones that were always there. The station's defensive systems suddenly went completely offline. The human fleet had somehow infiltrated every system without triggering a single alarm until they chose to reveal themselves. Our children were learning advanced physics while hiding in bomb shelters, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. Our grandmothers were calculating weapon trajectories while tending wounds. Our scientists were making discoveries that your best researchers couldn't achieve in centuries, because they were working with the fury of parents whose children had been murdered. Council leader Vorthak attempted to access his emergency communications, only to discover that the human fleet had taken control of all station systems. They were effectively prisoners in their own stronghold. "You want to know our true capability?" Marcus asked, gesturing toward the view screens now showing the human fleet in formation around the station. "In 6 months, we reverse-engineered your technology, improved upon it, and mass-produced weapons that make your arsenal look like children's toys. But that's not the impressive part." He paused, letting the implications sink in before delivering his final revelation. "The impressive part is that we did it while simultaneously evacuating and protecting our civilian population, maintaining our cultural identity, preserving our art and literature, and keeping our humanity intact. You tried to break us, and instead you forged us into something stronger." The Cathari delegate, known for their militant philosophy, spoke with something approaching respect. "What are your intentions toward the council?" Marcus turned to address the entire assembly. "That depends entirely on your next actions. You have 2 choices. You can continue this war, in which case you'll discover what happens when humans are truly committed to total victory. Or you can acknowledge what you've done and work toward making it right." "And if we choose to continue fighting?" Vorthak asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. "Then you'll learn why humans are the only species on our planet that actively hunts predators for sport," Marcus replied. "You'll discover what it means to be prey to beings who have spent millennia perfecting the art of killing things larger and stronger than ourselves." The holographic display shifted once more, showing Earth's current state. Instead of a conquered world, they saw a planet transformed into something unprecedented. A unified civilization with a single purpose, every resource dedicated to not just resistance, but conquest. "We're not the same humans you studied," Marcus said, his words carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "We're what humans become when you threaten everything we hold dear. We're the inheritors of every warrior, every survivor, every mother and father who ever fought to protect their family. And we have decided that the galaxy needs to learn a lesson about the consequences of threatening Earth." The chamber filled with the sound of approaching ships, as more human vessels dropped out of what the Council's sensors registered as impossible space. Not dozens, but hundreds. Their technology beyond anything the galaxy's most advanced civilizations possessed. "You invaded our home," Marcus said, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who spoke for an entire species, united in purpose. "You declared war on humanity. Now you're going to learn what humans are truly capable of when they stop holding back. The Galactic Council, masters of 1,000 worlds, conquerors of countless species, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. A species that became more dangerous the more desperate their situation became. They had awakened humanity's potential not through careful guidance or natural evolution, but through the crucible of existential threat. As Marcus stood among them, calm and certain, the delegates of the Galactic Council realized they were no longer the predators in this scenario. For the first time in their history, they had become the prey, hunted by beings who had perfected survival against impossible odds across millions of years of evolution on a world that never stopped trying to kill them. The age of the Galactic Council's dominance was ending. The age of humanity had begun, forged in fire and fury, shaped by loss and determination, and tempered by the absolute refusal to surrender when everything they loved was threatened. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And in that moment, as Marcus Chen stood surrounded by the galaxy's most powerful beings, it became clear that the hunters had become the hunted.